Today we're joined by Jim Smith of the Atlanta Botanical Garden, and guess what, folks? We're talking aquatic plants. I love aquatic plants. I've never had a great aquatic garden. I always admire them, and Atlanta Botanical Garden always has a really cool collection. Well, let's start with what are some of the different types of aquatic plants that we can grow and go from there.
We are in my favorite place in the garden here in the ponds. There's just so much to see here. Here in Atlanta, it's pretty easy to grow aquatics. We have lots of different types of aquatics that we can grow. In front of us, we have a water lily. Now, a lot of people call Lotus water lilies, and for common namesake, that's not incorrect, but the genus is Nymphaea,
right?
Instead of Nelumbo, which is the lotus. The pink one that we have right over here, this is Mayla, and it's just this beautiful pink color. Both of these that are in front of us are actually hardy water lilies. There are two different types of water lilies out there. There's hardy water lilies, and then there's tropical water lilies. The hardy ones you see in shades of peach and tend to be more pastel colors, but your tropical water lilies are going to be the bright ones. They're going to be bright red, blues, and purples, and they're going to be kind of the stars of the show. With tropicals, you have a lot of cool variegation in the leaves. This one right here, the peachy colored one, is called Texas Dawn. And it's morning here, so the buds are still closed up. They do close and open throughout the day. Behind you, we have Lotus. What's cool about this Lotus, this one is called Perry's Giant Sunburst. But what's cool about this is we're seeing all of the different life stages of a lotus in one plant. Here we have a bud, and then after the bud opens, the flower starts to drop all of the petals. It makes a giant pod, and the seeds start to dry up and become kind of like a rattle. Eventually they start to nod down, and the seeds fall out of the rattle and go down into the water and make the next round of lotus. So over here we have a built-up area so that these plants can be right on the surface of the water. They're called marginal plants. They're the plants that you find on the edge of a real pond. They can either be on dry land, or they could be here in a marshy area. One of the stars of the show is Equisetum. Common name is horsetail. Over here we have a variegated iris. And you might not realize that iris sometimes can actually be planted right in the pond. It can't be deep in the pond. It can only take about 1 to 2 inches maybe of water above its crown.
Well, we think of like Iris pseudacris, the flag iris, which traditionally loves to have really wet feet.
This one in particular is not even planted for its flowers. I could really care less if it flowers, but look at this foliage.
The foliage is great. Let's talk briefly about plants that can be invasive. When we think about what we're going to plant, especially if it's a waterway,
Sure.
like a creek in our backyard, there are certain plants that we want to either avoid or only grow them in a super contained area, like say a planter bowl.
Right. And the number one plant that comes to mind is the cattail.
Right.
It's fun. It makes those seed pods that blow in the wind, but they are highly invasive, especially here in Atlanta. Now, if you do want to use a great Typha cattail, there's a new one called Typha minima. It's a dwarf Typha. All the plants that we're seeing here are actually still in pots. Just sink the pot. We here at the garden use a mix of sand and red clay. We try to look for what's called virgin red clay, which is clay that doesn't have a lot of root mass in it and that kind of stuff. So you want it to be pretty clean. You just want a piece of the root. You can just put a few nodules in your pot so they grow really quick.
So is the water depth important on these? Or let's say we only have, say, 6 inches over the pot. Is that sufficient?
It depends on your plant. Again,
Okay.
the bigger lotus, they are the kings of the pond. They want to be on the bottom of the pond. They want at least 3 foot of water depth on top of them. Your water lilies, they're more of like a medium range. They're okay with 2 feet or maybe even 1 foot right underneath the surface of the water. Your marginal plants want to be right on the surface, no more than about 1 inch of water above them at all times. And your water is important. We dye our ponds here at the garden. The main reason is it looks nice. So when you look down in there, instead of seeing all the pots at the bottom of the pond, you're seeing your reflection looking back at you, and it just showcases the plants pretty nicely. Some other reasons are birds. Well, a bird has the ability to see through the reflection that is on the surface of the water. Dye in the water kind of eliminates that. They can't see the fish because they can't see through the water. So any aquatic life that we have in the pond stays a little bit more protected by dyeing the ponds. The third major benefit is it cuts down on a lot of algae growth in our ponds, because if you take out the sun's ability to travel through the water, you take out the ability for the algae and all that stuff to take hold.
It's a great look, and I had not even considered, the benefit in eliminating algae, because you're eliminating photosynthesis or limiting it.
Right.
Well, it's such a fascinating topic, and like I said, it's for me as a lifelong gardener, I've done very, very little aquatic gardening, and it's so exciting to hear that, yes, it's approachable, it's something you absolutely can do, and just bearing in mind the many, many tips that you've given us, you can be successful with it at home.